My name is Ethan, and I spent years living as a ghost in my own marriage. From the outside, everything looked fine. I was the quiet, supportive husband. Lauren, my wife, was charming, outspoken, and always knew how to work a room. People thought we were a great match. Her energy, my calm. But behind closed doors, it was different. I've always been the kind of guy who keeps his head down and lets his work speak for itself. I never liked talking about money or accomplishments, especially not at home. I wanted a relationship where I was loved for who I was, not for what I had. So even after my startup took off and I became the CEO of a growing tech company, I kept that part of my life private. I told Lauren I worked in product development. Technically true, but not the whole picture. At first, she didn't seem to care. We got married after 2 years of dating, and I truly believe she saw me for me. But as time went on, something shifted. Little comments turned into criticism. She started comparing me to her friends' husbands, how they dressed, where they vacationed, how quickly they climbed the corporate ladder. She'd sigh when I came home late from another boring day at work, not knowing I'd just closed a six-figure deal. She called me passive, unambitious. She joked that she was the real adult in the house. I laughed it off at first, thought maybe she was just stressed. But it kept getting worse. I handled all the bills, mortgage, groceries, car insurance. She never once had to worry about money. But somehow I became the burden, the background character in her story. I didn't fight back. I thought maybe if I stayed patient, if I kept being kind, she'd eventually see me again. Not as a paycheck, not as a placeholder, but as her husband, the man she once said she couldn't live without. I was wrong. And the day she looked me dead in the eyes and called me a joke of a man, something inside me started to crack. I kept telling myself she didn't mean it, that people say cruel things when they're stressed, that maybe if I just gave her more time, more space, more everything, she'd soften, come back, remember who we were before all this resentment started. But time only made her colder. She stopped saying thank you for anything. If I brought home dinner, she'd scoff and say it was the wrong order. If I cleaned the kitchen, she'd complain that I missed a spot. When I surprised her with a weekend getaway, she rolled her eyes and said, "Must be nice to pretend we can afford luxuries when you barely make enough to cover rent." That one hit deep. She didn't know I'd already paid the mortgage for the next 6 months, or that I'd personally funded her graduate program when she said she wanted more out of life. I didn't tell her because I didn't want her to love me out of guilt. I wanted her to choose me, not feel indebted. But she didn't choose me. Not anymore. The worst part wasn't the insults or the cold shoulder. It was how invisible I started to feel, like nothing I did mattered, like I was just there. A placeholder until someone more worthy came along. There was one night I won't forget. I had stayed late working on a partnership deal with a major university, something that would put our company on the map. I walked in the door, exhausted but proud, thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd tell her. Just this once. Shares the good news. But before I could say anything, she looked up from her phone and said, "You forgot to take the trash out again." I just stood there, bag still in my hand. And she followed up with, "Seriously, what do you even bring to this marriage?" That was the first time I didn't say a word. Not in defense, not in anger. I just stared at her. Not at the woman I married, but at the stranger who somehow replaced her. The silence must have unnerved her because she snapped, "Oh, what? Now you've got nothing to say? You don't even try anymore." That night I slept on the couch, and I think that was the moment I truly began to let go. In the weeks that followed, her behavior only grew nastier. Passive aggression turned into open contempt. She started suggesting that maybe we'd both be happier if we took a break, that maybe I should stay with a friend for a while, clear my head, let her breathe. What she didn't know was I'd already packed a bag. I just hadn't decided if I had the courage to use it. Then one morning as I was making coffee, she walked into the kitchen, arms crossed, and said, "You know what? You're holding me back. I don't want to wake up in 5 years still married to a man who's afraid of success." I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I just poured my coffee, looked her in the eye, and said, "You won't." She blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done holding you back." I left that afternoon. No fight, no goodbye speech. Just a note on the counter with my house key and one line. "When you realize what you lost, I hope it's not too late." I checked into a small apartment across town. Simple, quiet, nothing flashy. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. Sarah, my assistant, was the only one who knew the full story. She'd seen the late nights, the exhaustion, the way I'd smile through meetings even after being torn apart at home. She didn't say much, but the look in her eyes said enough. You didn't deserve that. I didn't rush to file for divorce. Not yet. A part of me wondered if Lauren would come to her senses, if she'd pick up the phone and apologize. Not out of desperation, but out of genuine regret. But the calls never came. Not yet, anyway. The first week after I left, I didn't hear a word from Lauren. I wasn't surprised. Pride was her armor. She probably told herself I'd crawl back, beg for forgiveness, promise to change. But I didn't. And by week 2, the cracks started to show. At first it was a few missed calls, then voicemails, long texts full of sarcasm and guilt-tripping. So you're really just going to walk out like a coward? Then, this is childish, Ethan. Come home and let's be adults. And finally, I miss you. Please, let's talk. But I didn't respond. I didn't block her either. I wanted her to feel the silence. By the end of the month, desperation bled through her messages. She said bills were piling up. She hadn't realized how expensive everything was. The mortgage, the utilities, even her gym membership, all of it was suddenly too much. She asked if I could just help out for a little while until she figured things out. I didn't reply. Then came the night she showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a quarterly review with my executive team when the receptionist buzzed in. Mr. Reynolds? There's a woman here to see you. Says it's urgent, says it's your wife. I felt every eye in the room shift to me. My heart didn't race. I wasn't flustered. I simply said, "Tell her I'm unavailable." Sarah looked at me from across the table, her eyes calm but alert. She knew this day might come. An hour later, when I stepped out into the lobby, Lauren was still there. Her eyes were puffy. She looked worn down, like life had finally caught up to her. When she saw me, she rushed forward. "Ethan, please, can we talk? Just 5 minutes." I raised an eyebrow. "Now you want to talk?" I didn't know. I didn't realize. She glanced around the high-rise lobby, the company name etched in stone behind me. "You didn't realize what?" I asked coldly. She hesitated. "That you're the CEO?" "I was the CEO the day you told me I was holding you back," I said. She went quiet. "I thought you were just in tech, a developer or something." "That's what you saw, Lauren, because that's all you wanted to see." "I wouldn't have said all those things if I knew." I cut her off. "And that's exactly the problem." She looked like she wanted to say more, but I walked past her up to the elevator and didn't look back. That should have been the end. But fate wasn't done with us yet. A few days later, as I met with my lawyer to discuss finalizing the divorce, he slid a folder across the table. "We did a financial trace as part of the standard proceedings," he said. "This came up. Thought you should see it." Inside was a medical invoice, a private clinic, 12 weeks into our marriage. I scanned the paper once, then again. My throat went dry. "She was pregnant?" I asked. He nodded. "She paid out of pocket, no insurance, no consultation. It was a termination." My mind went blank. 12 weeks. That would have been right around our first anniversary when we were still saying "I love you" every night, when I gave her that custom bracelet with the initials of the baby names we used to joke about. She looked me in the eye and said, "Someday." She'd already decided there wouldn't be one. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat the next day. I just sat on the balcony, staring at the city I'd helped build, wondering how I had missed it all. That weekend I agreed to meet Lauren one last time. We sat across from each other at a quiet coffee shop. No lawyers, no friends, just two people with too many scars and too few apologies. "I saw the records," I said. Her face paled. "You made a choice about our future. Alone." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally she whispered, "I didn't think you'd care." My heart clenched, not because she said it, but because she meant it. Somewhere along the way she'd stopped seeing me as a partner, as someone who deserved a voice in our life. I cared more than you ever realized, I said, but you never gave me the chance to prove it. She cried, told me she regretted it, that she was scared, that everything was spinning out of control back then and she didn't know how to stop it. But I wasn't there to console her. I wasn't there to fix anything. I'm not angry, Lauren, I said. I'm just done. And for once, she didn't argue. The day our divorce was finalized, it didn't feel like freedom, not right away. I walked out of the courthouse alone, holding a manila folder with a few signatures and an official stamp that said the last 7 years of my life had legally ended. It wasn't raining. There wasn't dramatic thunder. Just a quiet, warm afternoon. And me, trying to remember how to breathe. The first few months were blurry. I buried myself in work, attending every board meeting, reviewing every product launch, mentoring new hires like my life depended on it. In some ways it did. Work was the only space where I still felt in control. I kept things strictly professional with Sarah, though she was the only person who truly saw the cracks. She never pried, never crossed a line, but she always made sure I had coffee before 8 a.m. She always stayed late when I didn't want to go home. And when I did finally open up, just once, she didn't say anything. She just sat next to me, silent, present, real. It took over a year for the anger to dissolve, not just toward Lauren, but toward myself, for staying too long, for giving too much, for ignoring the signs when they were screaming at me. I started therapy, I joined a hiking group, I spent entire weekends offline, wandering through the woods, trying to rebuild some version of myself that didn't revolve around being useful to someone else. And slowly, I began to feel whole again. Lauren, meanwhile, hadn't disappeared completely. About 6 months after the divorce, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she had moved back in with her sister. She'd tried dating again, but it hadn't gone well. Turns out it's hard to build something genuine when you've spent years tearing someone else down. She bounced between part-time teaching gigs and low-level admin jobs. Nothing stuck. Financially, she was barely holding on. Emotionally, she was all over the place. Her social media became a cycle of motivational quotes, subtle jabs at fake people, and blurry selfies with captions like, "Healing takes time." But the messages never stopped. Every few weeks I'd get a new email or text. Sometimes it was nostalgic. "Remember our trip to Santa Barbara?" Other times, regretful. "I miss the way you used to make me feel safe." And occasionally, angry. "You threw everything away for what? Some assistant who worships you?" I never responded, not because I hated her, but because I finally understood what she was doing. Lauren didn't miss me. She missed the version of herself she got to be when I was around. The one who didn't have to worry about rent, car payments, or consequences. She missed the safety net, not the man who built it. 2 years after the divorce, I stood on stage at a tech conference in Seattle, presenting the next phase of our company's AI initiative. The applause was loud. My inbox exploded with investor requests. But what I remembered most from that night was walking off stage and seeing Sarah waiting in the wings, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "You didn't trip," she joked, handing me one. "First time for everything," I smiled. We sat on a bench outside the venue afterward, watching city lights dance on the water. "I'm proud of you," she said. I looked at her, not just as my assistant, not just someone who had been there through the worst, but as someone who had never once asked for more than I was ready to give. She'd earned her place in my life, not by pushing, but by staying. "I wouldn't have gotten here without you," I said quietly. She didn't blush, didn't flirt. She just clinked her glass against mine and said, "Yeah, you would have. But I'm glad I got to see it." We didn't kiss, we didn't talk about us. But something shifted that night. A door opened, not rushed, not forced, just ready. And the next morning, when I opened my phone to another message from Lauren that simply read, "Do you ever think about trying again?" I deleted it without hesitation. Not with anger, not with guilt. Just clarity. Some people think the end of a marriage is a failure, that walking away means you gave up. But I don't see it that way anymore. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose yourself. I spent years trying to be enough for someone who had already decided I wasn't. I gave love quietly, consistently, and without asking for applause. I wasn't perfect, but I was steady, loyal, present, and for some people, that's not flashy enough to recognize until it's gone. Lauren didn't destroy me. I need to make that clear. She didn't ruin my life. What she did was force me to face a truth I'd been too afraid to accept. That being good to someone doesn't guarantee they'll be good to you. That patience doesn't always lead to appreciation. And that loving someone deeply doesn't mean they'll see your worth. But here's the twist. Being underestimated was the greatest gift she could have given me. It made me look inward, rebuild, redefine what success meant outside of being useful to someone else. I learned to value my own voice. I learned to stop mistaking silence for strength. I learned that being the bigger person doesn't mean shrinking yourself to fit someone else's comfort zone. And slowly, I stopped living for someone else's validation. Now, when people ask if I regret not telling Lauren who I really was from the beginning, I just smile. Because if I had, she would have stayed for the wrong reasons. She would have built a life with the title, not the person. The truth is, love built on illusions will always collapse. What matters is what remains when everything else falls away. And for me, what remained was integrity, self-respect, and a quiet confidence that didn't need to be announced to be real. Sarah once told me, the way you carry yourself when no one's watching, that's who you are. She was right, because I spent so long being invisible to the one person who should have seen me. And I still chose to be kind, not because she deserved it, but because I did. I deserved to leave without bitterness. I deserved to heal without drama. I deserved to move forward without dragging my past behind me like dead weight. So if you're listening to this wondering if walking away makes you weak, let me tell you, it doesn't. It makes you honest. And one day you'll wake up in a life you chose, with people who see you clearly, and you'll realize the joke was never on you. You were never the joke. You were the lesson.